Today, we're going to explore 10 countries that may not be the most welcoming for American travelers in 2024. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Where in the world could that be? Well, buckle up, because we're about to dive into some fascinating geopolitical realities that can sometimes make travel a bit more complicated for those with a U.S. passport. Now, before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our future adventures. All right, let's get right into it and discover the top 10 places where Americans might face some extra challenges when trying to visit or move to in 2024. This is sure to be an eye-opening look at the ever-changing landscape of global travel. Okay, let's take a closer look at Venezuela, which rounds out our list of countries where Americans may face challenges visiting in 2024. Venezuela is a South American nation known for its striking natural beauty, from the Andes Mountains to the stunning Caribbean coastline. However, the country has been embroiled in a political and economic crisis for several years now. This crisis has led to a collapse of the economy and widespread political instability. As a result, the U.S. Department of State strongly advises against all travel to Venezuela due to factors like high crime rates, civil unrest, poor healthcare infrastructure, and the risk of kidnapping and arbitrary arrest of U.S. citizens. Obtaining a visa to enter Venezuela can also be a complex process. Since the breakdown of diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Venezuela in 2019, there is no longer a Venezuelan embassy or consulate, and the U.S. visa applications must now be made through a Venezuelan embassy in a third country, requiring a valid passport, completed application form, passport photos, proof of travel itinerary, proof of accommodation, and the appropriate fees. Despite Venezuela's many natural wonders, like the breathtaking Angel Falls and the pristine beaches of the Los Roques Archipelago, the current political and economic turmoil make it a very risky destination for American travelers at this time. Extreme caution and thorough preparation would be essential for anyone considering a visit to Venezuela in 2024. All right, let's dive a bit deeper into Libya, which ranks at number 9 on our list of countries where Americans may face challenges visiting in 2024. Libya, like war-torn Syria, is another country where ongoing conflict makes it a no-go zone for American tourists. The U.S. Department of State has issued a strong warning against all travel to Libya due to the high risk of crime, terrorism, kidnapping, and armed conflict throughout the country. The 2011 Libyan civil war and the tragic attack that resulted in the murder of a U.S. ambassador have significantly strained the relationship between Libya and the United States. As a result, obtaining a tourist visa as an American citizen can be an extremely complex process. In fact, tourist visas are currently not being issued at all due to the continued political instability in the country. However, it is still possible for Americans to travel to Libya on a business visa, provided they have the necessary documentation. This includes a valid passport, completed application forms, the appropriate application fee, passport-size photos, and an official letter of invitation from a Libyan-based company. If you do decide to take the risk and travel to Libya, the U.S. government strongly recommends that you register your travel plans with the U.S. Embassy through the STEEP, Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. This can help ensure you receive important updates and assistance if needed during your time in the country. Given the volatile and dangerous situation in Libya, this is clearly not a destination for the faint of heart. Okay, let's examine Syria, which ranks number 8 on our list of countries where Americans may face challenges visiting in 2024. Syria has been turned into a high-risk area due to the ongoing civil war that has ravaged the country. The U.S. Department of State firmly advises against any travel to Syria because of the serious threats of terrorism, civil unrest, kidnapping, and armed conflict throughout the country. The Syrian civil war, which began in 2011, has severely strained relations between Syria and the United States. As a result, while it is technically still possible to obtain a visa to visit Syria, the process is incredibly complicated and highly discouraged for American citizens. To apply for a Syrian visa, Americans must do so through the Syrian embassy in their country of residence. However, since the Syrian embassy in Washington, D.C. suspended operations in 2014, This means having to apply through a third country that still has a functioning Syrian embassy. This adds an additional layer of complexity to an already arduous process. It's also crucial to note that having a Syrian stamp in your passport could potentially result in being denied entry to other countries in the future. And with the ongoing conflict leading to extensive damage of Syria's vast historical and cultural sites, the overall safety and security conditions throughout the country remain extremely volatile. Given the dire humanitarian crisis unfolding in Syria and the significant risks involved, the U.S. government strongly advises against any travel to the country at this time. The situation is simply too dangerous for American citizens, regardless of the country's rich history and cultural heritage. Turkmenistan, that Central Asian nation known for its eccentric former president and the infamous door-to-hell crater. This land of vast deserts, ancient ruins, and striking modern architecture ranks as the seventh most challenging country for Americans to visit. The main hurdles? Turkmenistan's strict visa policies and the government's general wariness of foreign visitors. The U.S.-Turkmenistan diplomatic relations are limited, with human rights and democracy issues being major sticking points. Applying for a Turkmenistan visa is a complex process. You can't just do it online. You'll need to go through the Turkmenistan embassy or consulate in the U.S., which requires securing a letter of invitation. This often proves to be the biggest challenge, as you'll have to arrange your tour through a local Turkmen travel agency, who will then apply for the letter on your behalf. The approval process can take weeks, and there's no guarantee your application won't be denied without explanation. Independent travel in Turkmenistan is nearly impossible. Most tourists are required to book a guided tour for the duration of their stay. The only exception is a transit visa, which allows you to pass through the country for up to 5 days. But even that requires a detailed itinerary and is often rejected upon arrival. Oh, and don't forget, you'll need to register with the State Migration Service within 3 days of entering Turkmenistan, usually handled by your tour operator. Fail to do so, and you could face fines and complications when trying to leave. Despite all these hurdles, Turkmenistan does offer some unique attractions for the intrepid traveler. But be prepared for a challenging visa process and a tightly controlled tourism experience if you decide to visit this enigmatic Central Asian nation. Saudi Arabia. Once a tough nut to crack for American tourists, but now a bit more accessible thanks to some significant changes. Back in the day, getting a visa to the kingdom was a real challenge, with visas largely limited to business travelers, pilgrims, and family members of residents. But in 2019, the Saudis launched a new tourist visa as part of their ambitious Vision 2030 program to diversify the economy beyond just oil. Nowadays, Americans can actually apply for that tourist e-visa online, which is a relatively straightforward and quick process. You fill out the form, submit a passport photo, and pay the fee. The visa is valid for a year and allows for multiple entries, with each stay up to 90 days. That said, women travelers still face a few restrictions. Those under 25 have to be accompanied by a family member, while those over 25 can go solo. And while the dress code has been relaxed, women are still expected to dress modestly. Saudi Arabia does have some fascinating sights to offer, from the historic city of Diriyah to the stunning rock art of the Hale region. Just keep in mind that some sites may be off-limits to non-Muslims, and it's always best to follow local guidance on respectful behavior. All in all, a visit to the kingdom is much more feasible these days for American tourists, but you'll still want to do your research and be mindful of the cultural norms to make the most of your time there. The so-called North Korea of Africa, due to its reclusive policies and authoritarian government. Visiting this Horn of Africa nation is no easy feat for American tourists. The U.S.-Eritrea relationship is a tense one, with issues like human rights abuses and the detention of U.S. embassy staff creating major friction. And getting a tourist visa, that's a notoriously difficult process, with no guarantee of approval even if you've got all your ducks in a row. The wait time can drag on for months. And even if you do manage to score a visa, your freedom to explore Eritrea is pretty limited. You'll need to obtain a travel permit from the government to venture outside the capital, Asmara. These permits are often only granted for certain tourist-friendly areas, and straying beyond those can land you in hot water with the authorities. But those who have braved the challenges of visiting Eritrea often speak of its unique allure. From the striking Art Deco architecture of Asmara to the stunning landscapes of the Dahlak Archipelago, there's a certain appeal to this enigmatic African nation. If you're the adventurous type and don't mind navigating a labyrinth of bureaucratic hurdles, Eritrea could be a truly rewarding destination. Just be prepared for a complex and often frustrating process to even set foot in the country. Eritrea doesn't make it easy for outsiders, that's for sure. The island nation that's had a rather complicated relationship with the good old US of A. Over the years, things have thawed a bit, but there are still some travel restrictions in place that date back to the Cold War era. See, there's this whole US embargo against Cuba, known locally as El Bloqueo, that prevents American tourists from visiting just for the fun of it. But don't worry, there are 12 authorized travel categories that you can use to justify a trip to the island. The most commonly used one is the support for the Cuban people category. This requires you to maintain a jam-packed schedule of activities that, well, support the Cuban people and promote civil society. Think staying at private homes, eating at private restaurants, shopping at local markets, and engaging in discussions with the locals about their lives and society. Once you've figured out your travel category, you'll need to get your hands on a Cuban tourist card or visa. You can usually snag this through your airline when you book your flight. The card is pink if you're flying directly from the US and green if you're coming from elsewhere. Some airlines will include the cost of the card in your ticket price, while others may tack on a separate fee. Either way, it's a necessary step to get you into Cuba, despite the lingering tensions between the two countries. So if you're feeling adventurous and want to experience the unique culture and vibe of Cuba, start planning your trip. Just be sure to dot your I's and cross your T's when it comes to that pesky travel paperwork. The serene Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan, a place where the difficulty in traveling isn't due to political reasons, but rather a unique tourism policy aimed at protecting the environment and culture. Bhutan has a pretty strict limit on the number of tourists they allow in each year, and for American visitors, there's a daily fee of $200 to $250 that you'll need to pay. Now I know that might sound like a hefty price tag, but hear me out. It's an innovative, high-value, low-impact approach to sustainable tourism. That fee covers a whole lot. We're talking accommodation in 3-star hotels, all your meals, a licensed tour guide, transportation within Bhutan, camping equipment if you're trekking, and even a sustainable tourism royalty that goes towards funding free education, healthcare, and infrastructure development in the country. It's essentially an all-inclusive package that directly contributes to Bhutan's welfare. So while it might seem pricey at first, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. Bhutan is really intentional about controlling the flow of visitors to preserve their natural beauty and cultural heritage. It's a small price to pay to experience this truly unique and enchanting corner of the Himalayas. Iran, a country rich in history and hospitality, but fraught with diplomatic hurdles for American travelers. After the 1979 Iranian Revolution, relations between the US and Iran have been strained, with heavy sanctions imposed by the US over nuclear disputes. Now, traveling to Iran isn't outright impossible for Americans, but it's definitely not a walk in the park. You'll need to book a guided tour and go through a lengthy visa process just to set foot in the country. The journey begins even before you depart. Independent travel in Iran is off-limits for US citizens, so you'll have to join an organized tour led by a government-approved guide. Your tour company will provide a detailed itinerary that's not only required for your visa application, but must also be strictly followed during your stay. This leaves little room for spontaneous exploration, but the tours can range from general cultural experiences to more specialized interests like cuisine or adventure. So, if you're set on visiting Iran, be prepared to navigate some bureaucratic hurdles and relinquish a bit of your independence. But the chance to immerse yourself in Iran's rich history and warm hospitality might just make it all worthwhile. Let's close this list with the big one, North Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, as it's officially known. Prior to 2017, the brave souls who could visit had to go through guided tours from China, either by direct flights from Beijing or by train across the Yalu River border. With North Korea's isolationist stance, fueled by its political doctrine and ongoing tensions with the US, has led to even tighter travel restrictions. The current travel ban was sparked by the heartbreaking case of Otto Warmbier, a University of Virginia student who was arrested and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor after being accused of trying to steal a propaganda poster during a guided tour in 2015 to 2016. Tragically, he died shortly after being released. Now, Americans wishing to visit North Korea must obtain a special validation passport from the U.S. Department of State, which is only issued under very specific circumstances, like for journalists covering the region or humanitarian aid workers. So for the average American traveler, North Korea is effectively off limits. It's a stark reminder of the political complexities that can make certain countries inaccessible, even for the curious and adventurous. But understanding these restrictions is important as we navigate the ever-changing global landscape. Subscribe and hit the bell for more content.